The night was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound stand out against the stillness. Alex wiped his hands on a rag as he locked up the small garage he called his livelihood. The building was falling apart, the paint chipped and the sign barely hanging on, but it was all he had. He was known in town as the mechanic who never turned away a broken-down car, even when its owner couldn't pay. His pockets were always light, but his conscience was clean. He started down the cracked pavement, thinking about the bills waiting for him at home, when a sharp, violent noise shattered the silence. It wasn't the sound of an engine backfiring or a drunk smashing a bottle. It was the unmistakable crack of a fist hitting flesh, followed by a choked sob. Alex froze, his heart hammering. Then came a small voice, trembling, pleading for someone to stop. A child. Alex didn't hesitate. His tired legs moved before his mind caught up, carrying him toward the sound that now echoed through a narrow alley between two decaying buildings. When he turned the corner, the scene made his blood boil. A tall man in an expensive suit loomed over a woman, his hand raised as she cowered, clutching a boy who couldn't have been older than 8. The boy's tiny arms stretched out, trying to shield his mother, his small body trembling as he whispered, "Please, don't hurt her anymore." The man snarled something cruel, his words dripping with disdain, and struck the woman across the face. She staggered, nearly falling, but held on to her son with desperate strength. Alex felt fire surge through his veins. He didn't know who they were or why this was happening, but he knew one thing: he couldn't walk away. He dropped his rag, fists clenching, and stormed forward. "Hey!" His voice boomed through the alley, echoing against the brick walls. "Leave them alone." The man turned, his eyes narrowing. He was older, with a polished look that screamed money and arrogance, but his sneer only deepened when he saw Alex's oil-stained clothes and calloused hands. "Mind your business, grease monkey," he hissed. "This doesn't concern you." Alex's jaw tightened. "It does now." The man smirked, pulling a knife from inside his coat. The blade gleamed under the dim streetlight. "You want to play hero? Fine. But you'll regret it." The boy gasped, clinging to his mother's torn sleeve. She whispered frantically, "Please, don't, he'll hurt you too." But Alex wasn't listening anymore. Years of labor had built his body into something solid, and years of scraping by had built a spirit that refused to bend. The man lunged, slashing with the knife, but Alex dodged, his reflexes sharper than he realized. He grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisting until the man yelped in pain and dropped the blade. Without missing a beat, Alex drove his fist into the man's jaw. The suited figure stumbled back, dazed, but still came at him again. A flurry of blows followed, Alex taking a shallow cut across his arm but giving back twice the punishment. It didn't take long before the man collapsed against the wall, groaning, blood trickling from his lip. Breathing hard, Alex kicked the knife out of reach and glared down at the would-be aggressor. "If I ever see you lay a hand on them again, you won't walk away next time." His voice was low, steady, and full of promise. The man muttered something under his breath but stayed down, too weak to rise. Alex turned to the woman and her son. She was trembling, her cheek already bruising, her eyes wide with both fear and relief. The boy still held on to her, but his gaze shifted to Alex, filled with a kind of admiration and disbelief. Slowly, Alex extended his hand to help them up. "You're safe now. Come on, let's get you out of here." The woman hesitated for a second, then accepted his hand. Her skin was cold, fragile in his calloused grip. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You don't know what you've just done." Alex frowned, confused, but didn't press. Right now, all that mattered was getting them somewhere safe. He draped his jacket over the boy's small shoulders, then guided them out of the alley. The attackers' groans faded behind them as they stepped onto the main street, lit by the distant glow of tired street lamps. As they walked, Alex studied them more closely. The woman's clothes, though torn and dirty, were of fine fabric, clearly expensive. Her posture, even slouched with exhaustion, carried a certain dignity. The boy's face, despite the grime, was striking, sharp features and clear, intelligent eyes that didn't quite fit the life of poverty Alex knew too well. But none of that mattered to him. They were people in need, and he had done what anyone should have. The woman clutched her son tightly, glancing around nervously as though she expected danger to leap from every shadow. Alex tried to reassure her. "I'll walk you wherever you need to go. Nobody's going to hurt you while I'm here." She looked at him then, really looked, as if trying to measure the truth in his words. After a moment, she nodded, though her voice was heavy with something unspoken. "You're kind, kinder than you know." They continued in silence until the outskirts of town came into view. That was when headlights pierced the darkness. A convoy of sleek black SUVs rolled to a stop ahead of them, engines rumbling. Alex immediately stepped in front of the woman and boy, his fists clenching once more. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. The doors opened, and men in expensive coats stepped out. For a split second, Alex thought they were more attackers, another group of wolves ready to prey on the same fragile family. But then he saw something that made his stomach twist in confusion. These men didn't approach with weapons or anger, they bowed. They bowed to the woman. For a moment, Alex thought his eyes were deceiving him. He had expected hostility, maybe even another fight, but instead the men in expensive coats dropped their heads in deep respect, their movements deliberate and formal. The sight was so strange that Alex froze, torn between shielding the woman and trying to understand what was happening. The woman, still holding her son close, seemed to relax as recognition flickered in her eyes. She whispered something to the boy, who nodded and clutched her hand tighter. Then she placed a trembling hand on Alex's arm. "It's all right," she said softly. "They're not here to hurt us." Alex stared at her in disbelief. "Who are these people? What's going on?" Before she could answer, one of the men stepped forward. His coat was immaculate, his voice polished but urgent. "Madame Petrova, your father has been searching for you endlessly. The board is in turmoil. The oil council awaits your return." The name hit Alex like a thunderclap. Petrova. He had heard that name whispered in newspapers, spoken on television whenever the subject of oil empires and international deals came up. The Petrova family was one of the wealthiest dynasties in the world, controlling vast oil fields that stretched across continents. And this battered, frightened woman, the one he had just seen beaten in a filthy alley, was their heiress. Alex blinked, struggling to process the revelation. He glanced at her again, this time noticing the subtle signs he had ignored earlier, the refinement in her voice, the aristocratic lift of her chin, even the tailored design of her torn dress. She was no ordinary victim. She was someone powerful, someone the world revered, and yet she had been helpless in that alley until he stepped in. The woman straightened, her fear melting away as if a mask had been lifted. There was dignity in her stance now, authority that could not be hidden even beneath bruises. But when her eyes turned back to Alex, they softened again, full of gratitude. "You didn't know who I was," she said gently. "You just saw someone in need and chose to fight for us." Alex rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly aware of the oil stains still marking his shirt and the dried blood from his cut arm. He felt entirely out of place, standing in front of sleek cars and men who looked like they belonged to another universe. I just did what anyone should have done," he muttered. The boy, peeking from behind his mother's side, piped up in a small voice, "Not anyone would have done it. They all walked past before you came." His words struck Alex harder than any punch. The men approached with cautious reverence, one of them holding out an envelope bulging with cash. "Your bravery will be compensated generously," he said. "You risked your life for Madame Petrova. Please, take this." Alex glanced at the money, his heart aching. With that much cash, he could pay off the debts that haunted him, fix his failing garage, maybe even start over. But he shook his head firmly. "I don't want your money. I didn't help her for a reward." The men looked surprised, but the woman smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with something deeper than gratitude. "You see," she murmured to them, as though confirming a belief. Then she took a step closer to Alex. Do you know how rare it is to find someone like you in my world? Everyone sees wealth, power, and opportunity. No one sees me, not as a mother, not as a woman, just as an empire." Her words caught Alex off guard. For a moment he didn't know what to say. He had always imagined people like her lived above ordinary problems, shielded by their fortunes. Yet here she was, bruised, frightened, a target for violence, and still just as human as anyone else. She continued, her voice stronger now. "The man who attacked me was sent by those who want control over my family's empire. They thought I was vulnerable, and in a way, I was. But you proved something tonight, that courage doesn't come from money or power, but from the heart." She paused, studying him with intensity. "I need people like you near me. People who remind me of what truly matters." Alex shifted uneasily, torn between humility and disbelief. "I'm just a mechanic," he said quietly. "I fix cars, not empires." "Sometimes," she replied, her lips curving into the faintest smile, "fixing an empire isn't so different from fixing an engine. You find what's broken, and you make it run again. And maybe, you make it stronger." Her son tugged on Alex's sleeve. "Will you stay with us? Please. You're the only one who made mommy safe." Alex looked into the boy's pleading eyes, then back at the woman. The enormity of what had happened that night pressed down on him. He had started the evening as a nameless mechanic, weary from another day of scraping by. And now, he stood at a crossroads, face to face with a family that carried unimaginable influence. The men waited for his answer, the convoy ready to whisk them away into the gleaming world of wealth and politics. Alex glanced at the dark alley behind him, where the thugs still lay beaten, and then at the road ahead, illuminated by luxury headlights. His heart pounded with the weight of choice. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "I don't know what future you see for me in your world," he admitted. "But if staying means making sure no one ever lays a hand on you or your boy again, then I'll stay." The woman's eyes softened, her hand reaching for his once more, this time not out of desperation but trust. "Then you are more than a mechanic, Alex. You are family." As the doors of the SUVs opened, and the night swallowed up the last remnants of his old life, Alex realized something he never thought possible. In one act of courage, he had not only changed their fate but his own. The grease-stained mechanic had stepped into a world of oil empires, not as a servant, not as a hired guard, but as the man who had earned their faith. For the first time in years, Alex felt hope spark within him, a belief that maybe destiny had been waiting for this very moment, hidden in the shadows of a quiet street, waiting for him to take a stand.